So I got this text from you. We don't do walk-up music anymore because sometimes our video would just disappear if it's on YouTube for copyright.
I gotcha.
But I see that you sent me a text. End of the line by
The Traveling Wilburys.
The Traveling Wilburys.
Yeah.
Cole, do we have that?
Cool. I mean, look at
Oh, yeah.
Cole on the spot.
I know this song.
Yeah.
So just so you know, we're at risk of this getting shut down.
I'll take the blame.
Okay.
I'll take the blame. We'll cut it out. I won't sing it.
That's a good walk-up song. Gosh, Mike Chambers.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
And I'm not a huge music buff, to be honest
No?
with you. But I'm an emotion guy, right? So
Right.
I love music. I think it adds emotion to a lot of storylines or whatnot. This is a compilation. It's got like Tom Petty in it. It's got the leader of Electric Light Orchestra. It's got Roy Orbison. Check it out. I mean, it's got Bob Dylan's in it. So it was like a super group. It's like an original super group.
Supergroup.
Yeah. And that song is about it's going to be all right. Just be yourself. Stay true to who you are. Do the right thing. Materials don't matter. And over time, you're going to end up in a good place.
Ladies and gentlemen,
So, that's
Mike
my
Chambers at the Golden Calm
Yep.
Podcast.
Excited, man.
It's
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. So I want to talk a little bit about you. And I have so many questions. All peeking to what's it like to be in charge of a bank? That's the last question. But on the way there, who are you? Where are you from? Mike Chambers, where were you born and raised?
Cleveland, Ohio. That is definitely a lunch pail city. I mean, there's no easy jobs. There's not a lot of trust funds in Cleveland. I always say I didn't come from a rich family, but I came from a family-rich environment. We had a family of 8, enough food for 4. Mom and dad, just 2. Dad's a factory worker. My mom, she had 6 kids. So you know what her job was? Being a mom.
Being a mom.
And she always had a second job. The primary job was always being a mom.
Right. Factory.
So-
Which factory? Just out of curiosity.
So my dad jumped, I think he started off in steel and then he ended up as a tool and die maker. So they
Okay.
would make grinding wheels.
Yeah.
It's a very dirty job. You're mixing resin and grit together.
Yep.
You're putting in large molds. You're heating them up in ovens. I'm probably one of the few bankers around, certainly in Orange County, that grew up in a factory.
Yeah.
So-
like a foundry almost.
Yeah, and we in that scenario, it was great because now I work in such a politically correct, buttoned up environment. But
At the bank. Yeah, we're going to get to the bank. Yeah.
But when you grow up working at a factory, most of the coworkers were out of a prison release system. It's hard work. It was thankless.
Well, what's the difference?
Yeah, my dad basically he made his own labor supply. I think that's why he had 3 sons. So,
Yeah.
So, but anyhow, yeah. So it was fun, and it really taught you how to work.
So your formative years, it sounds like you're working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was work. Before.
What was your first job outside of your dad or family? What was your first job outside the family?
Well, I'll tell you. I'll go to my first real job.
Yeah.
Was as a telemarketer with a company called MBA America Bank. That was
Oh,
my
yeah.
first job out of college.
I had an MB and a credit card.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that bank.
I really only had 3 jobs in my resume. It was factory worker with my dad,
Right.
bartender in college.
Uh-huh.
So, and then when I left college, I moved back home. Primary purpose was get dad retired out of that line of work. And my sister told me about this amazing company that was on the rise, MBA America Bank. Credit cards were at that stage where Visa's coming out with everywhere that you want to be. They're exploding. It was really the onset of the digital payment system.
What is that, 1990? 1990?
Yeah, 1996 is when I took the job.
96, you took the job. Okay.
Yeah. So I would come in every day and dial about 500 phone numbers, cold call in.
With a rotor collar, or did you actually press
No,
those buttons?
they're pretty advanced.
Yeah, they
so
were
you're
good.
just sitting there with the headset on.
Yeah,
maybe
you're
that's why I'm
just-
so comfortable with this headset on. Just popping, and you just were dialing all day.
Okay.
So
Now, we brushed over college. Which college was it?
Coastal Carolina University.
Coastal
The
Carolina.
Chanticleers.
Yes.
Chanticleers. So, I picked my college probably not for the reasons that now apparent. I know you just went through the college process and you have children, but for me, it was in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And at that point in my life, when you are a family of 8 with enough food for 4, you didn't vacation a ton. And when you did, it was a car trip. So if you look on a map, you can get to the beaches of Myrtle Beach from Cleveland in about 11 or 12 hours. So my childhood, we would pile up in a station wagon and drive all the way there. And that's the only place we ever vacationed. So in my mind, it was the best place on earth at the time.
That's awesome.
And I love the city of Cleveland to this day.
Yeah.
But I just knew I wanted to be, I wanted something different. And I knew, and a life lesson, as you know, is you got to get a little uncomfortable sometimes. So I don't know if you qualify going to the beach college in Myrtle Beach as uncomfortable, but it was risky and scary back then.
Oh, sure.
I did. 'Cause you're a long way from mom and dad. So.
Okay, so you come back, now you're telemarketing, you're learning about banking, and then you do that for a couple of years.
Yep,
Do you do well?
Well, can I just tell you one story
Yeah,
about
of
my
course.
college? This is common for some of my friends. They know the story, but they're called the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers.
Mm-hmm.
And the Chanticleer is a male rooster, and it got its name from Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. The Nun's Priest section, he refers to the male rooster as the mighty Chanticleer. So Chaucer is the spirit behind that mascot. So super cool twist where I know the good Lord has a plan. I'm in college. I'm my senior class president. I got to speak at my own graduation, which was still one of the greatest honors of my life. And during that time, we were a relatively new college. That's probably why they let me in. They had pretty low academic standards back then, but relatively new college, so new that they had a mascot, the Chanticleer, but they hadn't named it. And I got to thank my dad at my own graduation speech, and his name is Chauncey. And I, told him how much I loved him, how much I appreciated the work, and I did for my mom too. And then that was in May of 1996. In June of 1996, they officially named my college mascot Chauncey the Chanticleer.
Oh, man.
And an assistant school newspaper editor reached out to me and told me we were going to name him Charlie, but we didn't think it was because CH and CH for Chaucer and Chanticleer and Charlie.
Yeah.
They're like, we didn't think Charlie was fancy enough for Chaucer. So how cool is that?
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So I know that's a little bit of a self-brag, but it just, look, I picked a college that was far away. I picked it for the reasons of change. I think it's important to kind of lean forward in life and just kind of go with it.
I love the whole story. I love the story. Any story about a boy with their dad is a great story.
It gets me to this day.
Yeah,
It
for
gets
sure.
me to that, even in the work I do now.
Yeah,
I love that.
that's cool.
So
Thanks for sharing that,
yeah,
Mike.
yeah. But I derailed you a little bit. You asked me a question.
What were we talking
You
about?
I got you confused. Jason, how about I ask some questions about you? Like, where did you go to college?
No, I know what we're doing now.
What about back on track?
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
just getting you a chance to reset.
Okay, the bank. Did you do well?
When I was at the credit card company?
Yeah, cold calling.
Yeah, I think I naturally, I realized pretty quickly I was good with the gift of gab, and that was a sales-driven environment. But I told everybody it wasn't the sales skills as much as the work ethic that puts you over the top in something like that. And I know this is an informational podcast, but I think the things that I learned there, I didn't have a lot of meaning in being a telemarketer per se. Who liked them? Nobody liked them. Years later, I was like, I'm one of the ones that said, let's get rid of it. It's not good. But I still found a lot of value in the habits I learned there, like persistence and being energetic. And then also looking at things differently. I could look at it as like I'm stuck dialing 400 numbers, or what a miracle. Like I get to call every state in the country today and talk to random people of different backgrounds and different ages. And I was definitely that person, right? I'd be on the phone for 20 minutes talking about everything but, and it would end up in a credit card sale. But it was just a great way to practice communication and learning about people. And I carried a lot of that maintaining energy and staying on task. I translated those into lifetime habits.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have done it if I didn't have that job.
Yeah, your story resonates with me. We're in the graduation era, and my team knows I say this all the time. I go to these graduations sometimes, and I hear the commencement speech, and I hear, oh, he's going to want you to just when you're a little
Can I
closer.
go a little closer here?
Yeah, you're doing good.
I'll do it.
The difference between the speech that says "do what you love," which I think is not terrific, love what you do.
Big difference.
A big difference.
Yeah.
And you're from a love what you do,
Yeah.
steel foundry
Yep.
background.
Yep.
Because you can find love in hard work.
Yep.
You can find love in people.
Yep.
And you can find love in any circumstance. And guess what? If you really, really, really love it,
Yep.
it works out.
Yeah, I think whatever situation you're in life, whatever you're doing, wherever you're working, you find meaning in kind of the habits that you're going to use the rest of your life. But more importantly, I think you find meaning in outcomes and the relationships.
Yeah.
In particular, if you can, there is value in having your own outcomes be positive. But to me, there's always been a lot of value about having relationships and seeing them have positive outcomes too. and that tends to be a little bit more lasting currency.
Cool. So I got to get to the bank.
All
I
right.
have to get to it. Let's not tell a long story about the next job. What was it though?
Which one?
I don't know. You said 3 jobs. You had 3. So
Factory worker.
factory
telemarketer.
Telemarketer.
So I'll speed that one up because I started in telemarketing, but just through sheer hard work, it was the company that put affinity marketing. So I washed out on the West Coast representing all the sports teams. Those were my major clients, and our job was to get their licenses and their likenesses on the front of the credit card.
Oh,
And
yeah.
As a massive sports fan, that was amazing. I mean, and there it is. I took an opportunity that I really got into credit card because I wanted to learn about credit.
Right.
You know, my family didn't have a lot of money. This gave me a chance to be taught about credit and get paid for it. And it was a bit of a grunt job, part-time telemarketer. And 8 years later, got moved to Southern California, and all of my clients were major sports teams west of the Mississippi. And just what a phenomenal job.
What a phenomenal job.
Awesome.
Kid from Cleveland.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And
But now today, you're the president of the bank that I bank at.
yep.
Yeah, so you're the president of a good-sized bank.
I just want to go on record right now that Jason's bankable.
Yeah, so it wasn't always the case, so thank you for that. So how do you get to be the president of a bank? Where did you get your foot in at the bank that you're at today? Because you're like a Jack Welch story. Like you didn't come in
Yeah.
at a high level.
Yeah.
You've worked your way up to the top job. So what was the opening to get you into this bank?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to start with the last job, but it tells the story of how it connects.
Great.
Right? So the last job, one thing I learned was it's hard sometimes to wake up every day and have that energy, that relentless energy, if you're just doing it for things. And I always think of one person specific that sat next to me when I was early in my career, and they put a Ferrari on their desk. And they were like, I want to make so much money that I can drive that Ferrari. And that person actually did that. They did. For me, it just said dad. It's a drive, attitude, determination, and I was gonna do whatever it took, and I was gonna keep the best possible attitude, and I was gonna stick to this until I could accomplish, which at that time my goal was get my dad out of a factory. I wanted to be in position so that my mom and my dad could retire, and I could help them, right? So that was really it's just more sustainable. So that kind of drove me. Anyhow, broke kid. I'm now in a really good job, the sports marketing job. That company got bought out by Bank of America.
Okay.
I made the choice to leave it. The reason I did that is I was helping my dad retire that year. And well, they also wanted to move me and my then girlfriend, who's now my wife. I kind of stayed for her too. So it was two big loves in my life, my dad and my girlfriend, who's now my wife. He ended up retiring, and I decided to retire with him. So I walked away from that first job. Now that was scary.
Yeah.
When I walked away, but with a very lengthy severance package because we got bought out. So the choices were take a severance package or move back to the East Coast. So having that bit of a gift, I didn't have a job. I joined the board of the local Boys and Girls Club because I had time. And I wanted to do something with my time, but I didn't know where I was going to commit.
And you had some severance, so
Yep,
you could spare some soul searching.
Yep. But that kind of I joined a charity to give, and it actually led me to an investment opportunity about a startup business bank in Mission Viejo called Partners Bank of California. And that's how I found it.
No kidding.
So I only invested because a couple of folks tied to the Boys and Girls Club board were investing. I just liked them. I kind of followed the crowd a little bit.
Now, for our watchers, this is going to throw some people off because I don't know if a lot of people understand how community banks work and what that means by you were at the Boys and Girls Club and you invested in a bank.
Yeah.
And it's not buying stock in Bank of America.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
So there are different types of banks, and I think there's 3 types of banks. There's let's say there's big banks, and we know what they look like. A Chase. There's 3 Chases on the street.
Yep.
Bank of America, Wells Fargo, the big banks.
Yep.
There are regional banks.
Yep.
And then there are, I would say, community banks.
Well,
Is that fair?
yeah, there's really kind of 2 segments of the small banks. I always say there's 4, but by definition, you're right. There's 3.
Okay.
Right. So there's the banks that are basically over 100 billion.
100 billion is a big bank.
There used to be 3. Now there's 31. Right. So
No
there's
kidding.
actually 31 that are over 100 billion.
Okay.
The regional bank category is 10 billion to 100.
10 billion to 100 billion.
Yeah, and there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 130 some of those. as of federalreserve.gov, December 31st, I look at these numbers, I research them. So somewhere in that neighborhood. And then 1 billion to 10 billion, or 10 billion and under is considered a small bank. But there's really two segments of there. The 1 billion in assets to 10 billion in assets
Yes.
has about 677 banks. And then there's like, I'm not kidding, like 3,000 of under 1 billion.
Under 1 billion.
Yeah,
Okay.
in assets.
In assets.
So I always refer to large bank, regional bank, small bank.
Small bank.
But the small bank has a couple segments of it. And under 1 billion, I call them community banks.
Okay.
Because they typically rally around a handful of communities, and they basically say, we're going to make two-way relationships with entrepreneurs. We want you to keep all of your deposits with us, and we're really only going to lend to you.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas regional banks, they get deposits from all over the place. They get and they'll lend to you, and they don't necessarily need the two-way relationships. A lot of times they have niches and they scale.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, the bigger bank you go, the more if it's, hey, here's the menu. At the community bank level, we also have a menu, but I always say if you're local, we're like In-N-Out Burger. We have a secret menu.
Yeah.
So pick us up. Pick up.
We
the
can
phone.
make something not on the recipe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's custom fit
That's
to
what you
want.
did for me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, and I don't think, especially with the calamity that's going out there in the world right now, Jason, everyone's kind of throwing them in too big of a bucket.
Right.
There's a massive difference between.
Well, we just had that crazy bank closure.
Yep.
We did a podcast on it. If you, the readers, watchers, we called Stakes and Banks, separate discussion.
I watched it.
Did you really?
Yeah, you asked me to watch it,
Yeah.
and you know what my takeaway was? That guy was a lot smarter than me. Terry, I think his name was. Yeah, his analogies were high-end steakhouses. Mine was I just threw fast food restaurants. At you. Right? So that's the difference in class between me and Terry. So, but at any rate, no, and he was spot on with his analysis.
He was on. That was early. We did it like 5 days after.
Yep, and
So
he
called
nailed it. He nailed it. I don't know that I would have been as accurate as he was that quick afterwards. But post review, he basically said in Silicon Valley's case, they made a unique choice in 10-year durational bonds. But I think the thing that I would point out, and the reason why I kind of am trying to sing the song about the difference between the banks, is they keep referring to those as regional banks. But by definition, the Federal Reserve and the FDIC, a regional bank is 10 billion to 100 billion in assets. All of these banks that have been in trouble, you name them, they outgrew their category real fast. They're all north. They're all edging into that large bank territory. And you hear a lot of things like, well, how do the regulators let this even happen? Well, it probably happened faster than they could keep up with, right? They all had hyper growth. And
you think growth is good, but not an outgrowth.
the thing about banking is, and kind of tie back to how you started, is, banks are born because a bunch of investors get together and say, we're going to start a business. And the government allows you to leverage that capital. So if you and I start a bank for $10 million, we follow all the FDIC rules, you can actually lend $160 million if you wanted to. Now, conservative banks, they only leverage their capital 12 times. Partners Bank, we're about 8.5 right now. 10 is really the line of demarcation in terms of just being conservative.
Yes.
But what happens a little bit with banks is they get bigger, they get more complicated, and they start stretching that envelope a little bit. And at the end of the day, there's investors that typically own them, and those investors want the biggest return. So they start maximizing their leverage, right? And then they start getting into some more complicated things, all looking to just get more of a return. So, in those cases, they had a wonderful ride, but some of them they put a lot of eggs in one basket. And
Well, let me ask you a personal question, which I think you're allowed to answer, which is how many assets? What are the asset line right now for partners?
So
what's your guys' number right now?
it fluctuates.
Yeah.
It fluctuates. So I'll just say we're about 450 million.
You're about 450 million.
Yeah.
That's a region. That's a community bank.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. So in that sector,
Well, $260 of it's mine.
thank you. So, it takes a lot of bricks to build an empire around, and you have a brick in there. So, look, the one really a message for whoever watches this is, I don't worry about. I know we're safe, but I'm a student of it, and I really just genuinely care about people. And there's so much fear and worry in this world already that I just want people to not fear unnecessarily. And we've talked about this. I mean, and you talked about it with Terry. How much of this was fear-based, right? And that's just that is a rampant disease throughout America and the world.
It really
right now.
is.
So, and I just want to remind everybody that there's still 4,130 banks that aren't in the news about potentially, in 2023 that aren't going under or being forced merged. There's lots of banks out there, and they're safe. I mean, anyhow.
No, Mike, I want to thank you for coming in.
Yeah,
I want you to come in again.
Yep.
I learned a lot just today, even though I didn't really realize that category that you just carved out for me, the 1 billion or less. I didn't know you were 450 million.
Yep.
And I want you to come back talk about sports.
Okay.
And some
sports.
money management.
I love that.
Okay, Mike.
I love that.
Appreciate
you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks,
Good to see you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.